The Academy's greatest failure, the graduation that never happened. Captain Maya Chen stood at the back of the Terra Military Academy's grand auditorium, watching her former classmates receive their commissions. The golden sunlight streaming through the tall windows seemed to avoid her corner entirely. She wore her uniform, but without the gleaming medals and honors that decorated every other graduate. Her file read Tactical Unsuited, Rejected for Advanced Command. The brass had been clear about her failings. Too aggressive, too unpredictable, too willing to break established protocols. Admiral Harrison stepped up to the podium, his chest heavy with decorations from the Centauri Wars. "Today we commission Earth's finest military minds," he announced. "Officers trained in the greatest tactical traditions, masters of strategic doctrine that has protected humanity for 3 centuries. Maya suppressed a bitter laugh. She had memorized every battle strategy, every formation, every protocol. She had also suggested improvements to half of them, and been written up for insubordination each time. While her classmates learned to follow orders perfectly, Maya questioned why those orders existed in the first place. The ceremony continued with perfect military precision. Each graduate stepped forward, saluted crisply, and received their commission. Maya had been scheduled to graduate with honors before her final tactical assessment. She had been given a simple scenario: defend a space station against superior enemy forces using standard fleet formations. Instead, she had abandoned the station entirely, used it as bait, and destroyed the enemy with a series of kamikaze runs that violated every rule of engagement. Brilliant tactics, her instructor had admitted privately, but completely unusable in real warfare. No admiral would ever approve such reckless strategies. When the stars went dark, the auditorium's lights suddenly flickered and died. Emergency illumination cast everything in red shadow. Admiral Harrison's voice was cut off by a sharp alarm that made everyone's blood run cold. Maya had heard that sound only in drills. Orbital defense breach. Through the tall windows, they could see Earth's orbital defense platforms exploding one by one, brilliant flowers of destruction against the black of space. Ships descended through the atmosphere, sleek and angular, nothing like human designs. The Cytherian Empire had found Earth. Panic spread through the auditorium. Fresh graduates who had never seen real combat stood frozen as their perfect world crumbled around them. Maya moved toward the windows, her mind already working. The alien ships were maintaining precise formations, textbook assault patterns. They were fighting exactly like the Academy taught humans to fight. Admiral Harrison's voice crackled over the emergency speakers. "All commissioned officers report to battle stations immediately. This is not a drill." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was grim. "God help us all." The ship of misfits. 3 hours later, Maya found herself in the docking bay of the orbital shipyard, staring at the ugliest vessel she had ever seen. The TSS Defiance looked like it had been assembled from spare parts by a drunk engineer. Its hull was patched in 17 places, its weapons were mismatched, and its engine configuration violated several safety regulations. "Chen, Maya, Captain, Provisional," announced Lieutenant Commander Brooks, reading from a tablet. "You're being given command of Experimental Vessel 07 and whatever crew is available." Maya looked around the docking bay. "What crew?" Brooks gestured to a group of people standing near the ship's ramp. There was Sergeant Torres, who had been court-martialed for refusing to abandon wounded civilians during a Mars incident. Engineer Patel had been dismissed from the Academy for designing weapons that were too dangerous for military use. Navigator Kim had been grounded for plotting unauthorized courses through asteroid fields. Medic Johnson had been reprimanded for treating enemy wounded before her own soldiers. "Congratulations, Captain," Brooks said with barely concealed disdain. "You're getting exactly what you deserve. A ship full of rejects and misfits. Try not to get them all killed." As Brooks walked away, Maya studied her new crew. Each of them had been dismissed or disciplined for the same reason she had. They didn't fit the military's perfect mold. They thought differently, acted differently, and had been pushed aside because of it. "Well," she said, climbing the ramp, "let's see what this rust bucket can do." First blood. The Defiance launched just as the Cytherian fleet reached Earth's inner system. Maya's orders were simple: conduct reconnaissance and report back. Under no circumstances was she to engage the enemy directly. Her ship was too small, too weak, and her crew too inexperienced. Maya had never been good at following orders. She watched the alien fleet on her tactical display, 47 ships in perfect formation, advancing in a pattern she recognized from Academy textbooks. The Cytherians fought like humans, which meant they had studied human tactics extensively. They knew exactly what Earth's forces would do because Earth's forces always did the same thing. "Ma'am," Navigator Kim reported, "I'm reading 3 enemy scouts moving to flank our defense fleet. If they complete that maneuver, Admiral Morrison's formation will be trapped." Maya studied the display. Morrison was following Tactical Manual Section 7.3 exactly. The Cytherians were countering with the obvious response: it would be a slaughter. "Sergeant Torres," Maya said, "what's our weapons status?" 6 missiles, 2 plasma cannons, and a mining laser that Engineer Patel somehow turned into a weapon," Torres replied. "And that experimental cloaking device." Engineer Patel looked up from his console. "Untested, probably unstable, and definitely not approved for combat use." Maya smiled for the first time in hours. Perfect. Breaking every rule. The Defiance vanished from sensors just as the first Cytherian scout ships reached their flanking position. Maya had powered down everything except life support and the unauthorized cloaking system. They drifted like a piece of space debris, invisible and silent. "Ma'am," Medic Johnson whispered, "shouldn't we warn Admiral Morrison about the trap?" "He already knows," Maya replied. "He's following standard protocol. Maintain formation, concentrate firepower, protect the heavy cruisers. The Cytherians are counting on it." Instead of attacking the scout ships directly, Maya positioned the Defiance between them and their mothership. When the scouts began their attack run on Morrison's fleet, she struck from behind. The mining laser, supercharged by Patel's modifications, cut through the first scout's engines. The ship spiraled out of control, crashing into its wingman. The third scout turned to engage, but Maya had already moved. She used the debris from the first ship as cover, fired her missiles in a spread pattern that forced the alien ship into an asteroid field, then finished it off with the plasma cannons. The entire engagement lasted 90 seconds. 3 enemy ships destroyed, 0 human casualties. The message. Back on the command ship, Admiral Morrison stared at his tactical display in confusion. His sensors showed 3 Cytherian scouts had simply vanished. No weapons fire, no distress signals, nothing. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the Defiance." "The what?" "Experimental Vessel 07. Sir, Captain Chen reporting successful completion of reconnaissance mission." Morrison's face turned red. "Get me that captain on the line immediately." Maya's face appeared on the main screen, calm and professional. "Admiral, I'm transmitting detailed scans of the enemy fleet. Their tactics are based entirely on our own military doctrine. They've studied our strategies and prepared counters for everything. Captain Chen, did you engage enemy forces in direct violation of orders?" "No, sir," Maya replied with a straight face. "My orders were to conduct reconnaissance. I observed that the enemy scouts were a threat to our reconnaissance mission, so I removed that threat. The reconnaissance mission was then completed successfully." Morrison stared at her. In the background, he could hear her crew trying not to laugh. "Chen, you destroyed 3 enemy ships with an experimental vessel and a crew of Academy rejects." "Yes, sir. It turns out that when you don't fight the way they expect, they don't know how to respond." For the first time since the invasion began, Admiral Morrison smiled. "Captain Chen, I'm giving you new orders. Take your ship of misfits and cause as much chaos as possible. Don't follow any protocols. Don't use standard tactics, and definitely don't do anything predictable. Sir, that's not really an order. That's just asking me to be myself. Exactly, Captain. Earth's elite trained you for war, and you failed every test. Now let's see if that failure can save us all. The hunt begins. Deep in space, aboard the Cytherian command ship, High Strategist Vextar studied the tactical reports with growing concern. 3 scout ships had been destroyed by a single human vessel using tactics that made no sense. The humans had not followed any known strategic doctrine. They had not maintained formation, had not concentrated their firepower, and had not protected their most valuable assets. Instead, they had attacked from an impossible angle, used debris as concealment, and employed weapons that should not have existed on a ship of that class. It was chaotic, unpredictable, and entirely contrary to everything the Cytherians had learned about human warfare. Analysis. Vextar asked his tactical team. Unknown, High Strategist. The human ship designated Defiance appears to be operating outside all established parameters. Our combat algorithms have no counter-strategies for such random behavior. Vextar's 4 eyes narrowed. The Cytherian Empire had conquered 17 species across the galaxy. Each time, they had studied their enemies' military doctrines, calculated optimal counter-strategies, and achieved swift victory. But this ship, this crew, seemed to operate without doctrine at all. Mark the vessel as priority target, Vextar commanded. Assign 3 hunter squadrons. I want the ship destroyed before it can spread its chaos to the rest of the human fleet. But Maya Chen and her crew of misfits were just getting started. They had spent their entire lives being told they were wrong, that they didn't belong, that their way of thinking was unsuited for military service. Now, for the first time, being different wasn't a weakness. It was humanity's greatest weapon. When humans stopped playing by the rules. The impossible victory. 6 days after first contact, the Defiance had become a ghost story among the Cytherian fleet. Ships would report the strange human vessel on sensors, only to have it vanish without a trace. Supply convoys would arrive at their destinations missing escorts. Communication relays would go silent without warning. The humans called it guerrilla warfare. The Cytherians called it madness. Maya stood in the Defiance's cramped command center, studying star charts with Navigator Kim. They had just finished their latest raid, destroying a Cytherian fuel depot by crashing an empty cargo container into it at near light speed. The explosion had been visible from 3 solar systems away. "Ma'am," Sergeant Torres reported, "we're being hailed by Admiral Morrison." The Admiral's weathered face appeared on screen, and for the first time since Maya had known him, he was smiling. "Captain Chen, I don't know what you and your crew are doing out there, but it's working. The Cytherian advance has slowed to a crawl. They're pulling ships back from the front lines to hunt for you." "Just keeping them busy, sir," Maya replied. "Though I think we might have a bigger problem. They're adapting faster than expected." Morrison's smile faded. "Explain." Engineer Petal looked up from his console. "We've been monitoring their communications, sir. They're trying to develop new tactical algorithms to counter our random behavior. The thing is, we're not actually random. We're just thinking differently than they expected. And once they figure out how we think," Medic Johnson added, "they'll be able to predict us just like they predicted everyone else." Maya nodded grimly. "We need to end this before they learn to think like us." The Cytherian response. High Strategist Vextar stood before the assembled War Council aboard the flagship Eternal Dominion. Behind him, holographic displays showed the devastating losses inflicted by a single human ship. 17 supply convoys destroyed. 9 communication stations eliminated. 4 patrol squadrons missing. "The humans have abandoned all military doctrine," reported Sub-Strategist Krillin. "They use civilian vessels as weapons, employ mining equipment in combat, and coordinate attacks using entertainment frequencies. Our tactical computers cannot process such chaos." Vextar's mandibles clicked in frustration. "Then we must think like they do. What drives these humans to fight so unpredictably? Analysis suggests the crew of the Defiance consists of humans rejected by their own military, another strategist reported. They have been deemed unsuitable for standard service. Unsuitable, Vextar repeated. By what standards? They question orders, ignore protocols, and prioritize individual initiative over group conformity. Their own species considers them defective. Vextar was silent for a long moment. In Cytherian society, conformity was the highest virtue. Every citizen knew their role, followed their programming, and acted in perfect harmony with the collective will. The idea of individuals thinking for themselves was not just foreign, it was terrifying. Double the hunter squadrons assigned to this vessel, Vextar commanded. I want every ship in our fleet searching for them. This chaos ends now. The teaching moment. Meanwhile, light years away from the main battle, Maya had brought the Defiance to a hidden asteroid base where other unsuitable humans had gathered. The base was a collection of salvaged ships and mining platforms, home to pirates, smugglers, and outcasts who had never fit into Earth's structured society. Captain Rex Morrison, the Admiral's disgraced son, met them at the docking bay. Rex had been expelled from the Academy for smuggling, but his knowledge of hidden hyperspace routes was unmatched. Maya, Rex said, embracing his old friend, heard you've been making the brass nervous. Half the fleet commanders are demanding you be court-martialed. The other half want to give you medals. Right now, I just want to end this war, Maya replied. The Cytherians are learning. Soon, they'll be able to predict our moves. Rex led them through the base's main corridor. Everywhere Maya looked, she saw humans who had been rejected by the military establishment. Engineers who designed weapons too dangerous for approval. Pilots who flew patterns too risky for regulations. Tacticians who proposed strategies too radical for consideration. You know what I've learned running this place, Rex said. The military doesn't want soldiers who think for themselves. They want parts in a machine, all identical, all predictable. But out here, different is survival. They entered a vast chamber where dozens of modified ships hung in zero gravity. Each one was unique, built from salvaged parts and creative desperation. No two were alike. The Cytherians study our military tactics because our military is standardized, Maya realized aloud. But they can't study this because no two of these ships fight the same way. Rex grinned. Exactly. So the question is, are you ready to turn every outcast, pirate, and reject inhuman space into Earth's most dangerous fleet? The gathering storm. Word spread through the underground networks faster than official military channels. On distant mining colonies, smugglers loaded their ships with improvised weapons. In asteroid belts, pirates abandoned their rivalries to join a greater cause. On orbital stations, engineers who had been rejected for being too creative began modifying civilian vessels for combat. They came from everywhere. The freighter captain who had been dismissed for refusing to abandon a damaged ship in a storm. The asteroid miner who had been fined for using explosives in unsafe ways. The transport pilot who had been grounded for taking his ship through an unstable wormhole to deliver medical supplies. Each brought their own ship, their own crew, and their own way of fighting. Some used mining charges as missiles. Others had turned cargo haulers into ramming ships. A few had jury-rigged faster-than-light drives that could skip through hyperspace in ways that violated every safety regulation ever written. Maya stood on the observation deck of the asteroid base, watching the most unusual fleet in human history assemble. 57 ships, no two alike, crewed by people who had never learned to fight by the rules, because the rules had never wanted them. Think they'll follow orders? Sergeant Torres asked. Maya smiled. I'm not going to give them any. That's the point. The final hunt. High strategist Vextar received the reports with growing alarm. Human ships were appearing throughout Cytherian space, but not the organized fleets they had expected. These vessels attacked alone, or in small groups, used tactics that seemed to defy logic, and disappeared before reinforcements could arrive. A mining vessel had destroyed a cruiser by detonating its entire cargo hold of processed uranium at point-blank range. A passenger liner had somehow modified its engines to create an artificial black hole that swallowed an entire patrol squadron. A cargo hauler had used its loading cranes to literally tear apart a destroyer's hull. "They fight like they have nothing to lose," reported sub-strategist Krillin. "No ship attempts to preserve itself. They sacrifice everything for tactical advantage." Because they do have nothing to lose, Vextar realized. These are not their elite forces. These are their outcasts, their rejects. Humans their own society has abandoned. The revelation was disturbing. If these were the humans that Earth considered worthless, what did that say about the species as a whole? How could any civilization produce such dangerous individuals and then cast them aside? "High strategist," the communications officer announced, "we're receiving a transmission on all frequencies. It's from the human vessel Defiance." Maya's face appeared on the command screen, calm and confident. Behind her, the bridge of her patched-together ship was visible, along with her crew of Academy rejects. "High strategist Vextar," Maya said, somehow knowing exactly who she was addressing. "I'm Captain Maya Chen of the Terran Defense Force. I have a proposition for you." "Speak," Vextar replied, curious despite himself. "You've spent months studying how humans fight, learning our tactics, predicting our strategies. But you've been studying the wrong humans. You've been preparing to fight our best soldiers, our elite forces, our perfectly trained military machine." Maya gestured to her crew. "We're not Earth's best. We're Earth's worst. We're the ones who failed every test, broke every rule, and got kicked out of every academy. We're the humans that humanity itself didn't want." Vextar felt a chill of understanding. "And if we can do this much damage," Maya continued, "imagine what Earth's real military is going to do to you now that they've learned to fight like us. When the rules don't matter." The final battle began not with a coordinated assault, but with chaos. Maya's fleet of misfits scattered across the Cytherian formation like drops of mercury, each ship fighting its own war. There was no formation to break, no strategy to counter, no doctrine to exploit. The Eternal Dominion found itself surrounded by enemies that should have been easy to defeat. A luxury yacht was somehow keeping pace with military vessels, while firing weapons that belonged on a battleship. A garbage scow had launched a swarm of modified waste containers that were homing in on engine signatures. A hospital ship was broadcasting a virus that was crashing Cytherian targeting computers. High strategist Vextar watched his perfectly coordinated fleet fall apart as each ship was forced to fight a different kind of battle. His captains, trained to execute precise maneuvers in perfect formation, found themselves facing opponents who seemed to operate without any plan at all. "All ships, maintain formation," Vextar commanded. "Formation is compromised," reported his tactical officer. "Enemy vessels are operating independently. There is no pattern to disrupt." Maya's voice crackled over the communication system. "The thing about being a failure, strategist, is that you stop caring about looking stupid. And when you stop caring about looking stupid, you start trying things that work." The Defiance materialized directly above the Eternal Dominion, having somehow approached undetected. But instead of attacking, Maya did something no military tactician would ever consider. She hailed the enemy flagship directly. "Vextar, you want to know why we're winning. It's not because we're better soldiers. It's because we're not soldiers at all. We're humans who never learned how to give up." "Your resistance is futile," Vextar replied, but his voice lacked conviction. "The Empire has conquered 17 species. We will conquer yours as well." Those 17 species had military doctrines you could study and counter. They fought the way they were supposed to fight. But Earth made a mistake when they rejected us. They created an entire army of people who don't know how to lose properly. Maya's final gambit was as insane as everything else she had done. Instead of trying to destroy the Eternal Dominion, she offered Vextar something no military commander in history had ever been offered: surrender. "You can keep fighting us," Maya said, "and we'll keep getting more unpredictable, more desperate, and more creative. Or you can withdraw from human space and find an enemy that fights fair." Vextar looked around his command bridge. His officers were staring at their instruments in confusion as more impossible attacks continued around them. A pizza delivery ship had somehow breached their shields and was boarding their sister ship. A wedding barge was using its decorative fireworks as guided missiles. For the first time in his career, high strategist Vextar encountered an enemy he could not understand, predict, or defeat. The humans weren't just different, they were incomprehensible. "Signal the fleet," he commanded quietly. "We are withdrawing from this system." The Academy's greatest success. 6 months later, Captain Maya Chen stood once again in the Terra Military Academy's grand auditorium. This time, she wasn't watching from the back. She was on the stage, addressing a room full of future officers. "The military will teach you tactics, strategy, and protocol," she told the assembled cadets. "You'll learn formations, procedures, and proper military bearing. Most of you will become excellent officers, following in the footsteps of the great commanders who came before you." She paused, looking out at the eager young faces. "But some of you won't fit the mold. Some of you will question orders, break rules, and think differently than everyone else. When that happens, remember this: the galaxy doesn't need more perfect soldiers. It needs more humans willing to be imperfect in creative ways." Admiral Harrison, now retired, watched from the front row with pride. The woman who had once been deemed unsuitable for military service had become Earth's most decorated officer. Her tactics were still considered unorthodox, her methods still controversial, but her results spoke for themselves. After her speech, Maya walked through the Academy halls where her portrait now hung alongside history's greatest military leaders. The plaque beneath it read, "Captain Maya Chen. Proof that Earth's greatest weapon has always been the humans it thought it didn't need." In the distance, stars twinkled peacefully in the night sky. Somewhere among them, the Kitharian Empire was probably preparing to invade someone else, confident in their ability to study, predict, and counter any military force they might encounter. Maya almost felt sorry for their next target. Almost. But then she remembered the most important lesson of the war. When you train your best to be identical, your worst become irreplaceable. And humanity's worst had just taught the galaxy that sometimes the most dangerous weapon is simply refusing to fight the way your enemy expects. Earth's elite had trained her for war, and she had failed every test. But in the end, that failure had saved them all.